So far we discussed stomach and small intestines. We've got تاني في large intestines. Large intestines specifically are not that much of an area of questions برضو. So I'm going to be going really quickly through it. I'm not going to be I'm not going to be talking about it in details. طيب فإننا في large intestines, first thing you guys should know are just the general features of large intestines that make it different from a small intestines. تمام. So features of the large intestines عندنا الأومنتال appendices, عندنا التينيا coli, عندنا الهاوسترا. So I'll explain what each one means. So omental appendices are basically peritoneal patches filled with fats, like these ones. Can you see them? So they كده دول اسمه omental appendices أو ممكن يكون اسمه appendices epiploica. Yeah, that's a much easier name. If you just say appendices, they take it as a good enough answer. فهم basically they're just fat. And they're a feature of large intestines. The second thing is a tinea coli, which are the 3 longitudinal muscles that run along the large intestine. So it's this. It's the tinea coli. They're large. They're 3 longitudinal muscles that make a band around the intestines. And the third thing that's very specific about large intestines are haustra, which are saculations, which are these, basically. So this appearance is called the haustra. Okay, so yeah, so these are the 3 features that are specific to large intestines. And if you see them, it's definitely large intestines. They're what makes the difference between large and small intestines. But next, in different organs or parts of the large intestine, عندنا أول حاجة السيكم والأبندكس. And I want to just focus on the appendix itself and not the cecum. So أهم حاجة في appendix is that it's covered by peritoneum. And the location of the appendix is McBurney's point. So the location of the appendix, McBurney's point, which is 1/3 of the oblique line joining the anterior superior iliac spine to the umbilicus. So basically, if this is a person, this is their umbilicus, and this is their anterior superior iliac spine, you draw a line between it, and then the area that's 1/3 is called McBurney's point. This area right here is McBurney's point, and basically the location of the appendix. This is an important one. Yeah, of course, I'll repeat. So basically, قلنا إنه appendix. عايزين نتكلم عن appendix أكتر من نتكلم عن السيكم. So the appendix basically is covered by peritoneum. Its location is حاجة اسمها McBurney's point. So that's the location of the appendix. The location of the appendix is right here. Basically, you draw a line between an umbilicus and the anterior superior iliac spine, and you divide the line into 3. And the first 1/3 is McBurney's point. Okay? So it's 1/3 of the distance between the anterior superior iliac spine to the umbilicus. This is one thing that you need to know. اللي هي McBurney's point. Another thing you need to know is the position of the appendix. So the appendix data, it can be found in different positions. And most common position is retrocecal. ودي الحاجة المفروض تعرفها. إنه بس most common شنو. So most common position is retrocecal, which means that you'll find the appendix behind the cecum. يعني as you can see here, this is the appendix. This is the appendix. And it can be found in different positions. The most common is this one, which is it being found retrocecally. So it's behind the cecum. تمام? So So the two most important things about the appendix is its location, which is McBurney's point, or its position, which is most commonly retrocecal. تمام؟ ممكن نتكلم عن البلد سبلاي وكده، لكن I'm gonna be talking about it later برضه. في تاني the colon. So the colon is gonna view ascending colon, transverse colon, وفي descending colon، لكن we only want to talk about the ascending with the and transverse. لأنه شنو؟ لأن the rest is part of the hind gut. So الميد gut حقنا اللي هو بنتكلم عنه من يبال is gonna be the duodenum and jejunum, sorry, jejunum, ileum, last two parts of the duodenum معاه appendix, الcecum, ascending colon, part of the transverse colon. تمام؟ غير كده بيعملوا لنا mid gut. Okay? So في mid gut specifically we only want to talk about the ascending colon and the transverse colon. Okay? Okay, so when it comes to the ascending colon, so ascending colon starts from the cecum to the right hepatic flexure or right colic flexure. يلا دي حاجة ممكن يعني could be an area of question is إنه if you see لو ده قلنا ده ascending colon وده transverse colon وده descending colon عندنا حتتين two areas where the colon changes in direction, and these we call them flexures. تمام? So the area where the colon changes in direction is known as a flexure. في two flexures, here right or left. So this is the right colic flexure, this is the left colic flexure, but they have second name. So the right colic flexure is known as the hepatic flexure, while the left colic flexure is known as the splenic flexure. تمام? تمام. So طيب عندنا قلنا ascending colon، ترى عندنا transverse colon. transverse colon بيبدأ من ال right colic flexure اللي هي hepatic flexure دي up into the left colic flexure اللي هي splenic flexure. تمام؟ طيب proximal 2/3 of it is part of the midgut, the distal third is part of the hindgut. تمام؟ يعني transverse colon part of it is midgut and part of it is hindgut. يبقى عايزين نركز أكتر حاجة على ال blood supply again. So we want to talk mostly about the blood supply of the midgut. So we want to talk about the superior mesenteric artery. So basically the superior mesenteric artery تدينا a lot of branches. تدينا branch اسمه jejunal و ileal branches which supply the jejunum and ileum directly. تدينا inferior pancreatical duodenal which gives to the duodenum and the pancreas, specifically the last two parts of the duodenum. So the third and the fourth parts of the duodenum. And then the middle colic or right colic which supply an ascending colon with transverse colon. عندنا ileocolic. Ileocolic supplies an ileal branch supplies the ileum. فيه colic branch supplying the colon. فيه cecal branches supplying the cecum. في anterior cecal or posterior cecal. The important one is the posterior cecal. لأن posterior cecal بيدينا another branch اسمه appendicular which supplies the appendix. تمام؟ يعني I'll repeat it again, but this time I'll be focusing on the more important stuff. So عندنا jejunal وileal للجejunum والileum. عندنا inferior pancreatical duodenum للجدنم. عندنا colic middle colic or right colic للcolon. عندنا ileocolic. يلا ileocolic ده بيدينا حاجة اسمها posterior cecal, and the posterior cecal gives us the appendicular which supplies the appendix. تمام؟ Yeah. Okay, great. طيب next in الهايند gut, which is the last one of the three. يلا الهايند gut بيبدأ من الفيرست last distal third of the transverse colon وبينتهي في الريكتم. So عندنا منه descending colon, sigmoid colon و beginning of the rectum. تمام؟ We're not going to be talking about them because honestly they're just I can't think of a lot of information يعني a lot of questions where it could be from it. بس هنجيب سيرة inferior mesenteric artery, which is basically بتدينا 3 branches: a left colic, which is for the descending colon, a sigmoid, which is for the sigmoid colon, و a superior rectum, which is a continuation of the inferior mesenteric بتمشي تدي rectum. تمام؟ يعني بس تدي 3 branches: left colic, sigmoid, و superior rectum. طيب one thing you need to know is important, بس حاجة خفيفة كده، إنه الارتريز حقت inferior والsuperior mesenteric كلهم they anastomose, so they all connect together وبيدونا artery أخيرة اسمها marginal artery. تمام؟ So marginal artery دي it's basically a big artery that's formed of all of the arteries حقت small and large intestines. تمام؟ if you ever see a mention of a marginal artery في small intestines or large intestines, they just mean the artery حقت mesenteries أو arteries حقت large intestines كلها. That part makes sense يا جماعة؟ Yeah, okay, let me repeat it again. So basically إننا إحنا superior mesenteric artery والinferior mesenteric artery صح؟ يلا superior mesenteric ادتنا branches كتير، ادتنا البرانش ده وده 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 وكده. تمام؟ وجات inferior mesenteric برضه ادتنا branch للrectum وبرانش للsigmoid وبرانش للleft colic و so on. يلا البرانشز دول كلهم they don't just directly supply، بيعملوا قلنا قبل بيعملوا arcades والarcades بيعملوا vasorecta والكلام ده. يلا they basically like interconnect when they're supplying, and when they interconnect they form one big artery that's found inside the intestines بنسميها marginal artery. make sense؟ يعني الارتري الكبيرة around دي يسموها marginal. Okay, anastomosis between all of the vessels, all of the blood, the arteries that supply the large intestine. يعني هيكون في anastomosis between مثلا left colic و middle colic و right colic و ileocolic و sigmoidal كلهم. يعني both ال superior mesenteric وال inferior mesenteric. make sense؟ يعني دي superior mesenteric ودي inferior mesenteric. هما they're gonna anastomose together because of the marginal artery. make sense؟ اسمها marginal artery. okay تمام great. طيب this is pretty much الكلام اللي عايزين نقوله عن الجد ذات نفسه. now we're just going to be talking about the rest of it. So far we talked about the GIT اللي هو الفore gut, mid gut, or hind gut. We talked about the blood supply of each of the three, and as I said, it's more important to know the blood supply than to know الكلام ذاته. يعني blood supply is more important. تمام? One thing you guys should, I didn't mention, but you guys should know is the level of each one of the arteries. يعني إنه الceliac في level of T12, the superior mesenteric artery في level of في level of L1, the inferior mesenteric artery في level of wait a second, I can't remember, like in the 1 second. Yeah, sorry, it's the level of L3. So يعني دي حاجة مهمة برضه to remember is إن الceliac is found في level T12 والsuperior mesenteric في L1 والinferior mesenteric في L3 تمام. طيب بعد ذاك احنا we're gonna be talking about the liver شوية عن the gallbladder, not much, but we're focusing on the liver. We'll talk about the pancreas, but not in details. We'll talk about the venous drainage of the entire abdomen, معاه the portal circulation. We'll talk about the posterior abdominal wall very lightly. We'll talk about the lumbar plexus, and then شوية برضه very likely about the retroperitoneal organs. Okay? So our main focus from now on going forward is going to be on the liver and the portal circulation and the lumbar plexus. I know they're areas where people usually forget and they're important for questions. Before that, I want to complete talking about the abdominal aorta. يعني abdominal aorta ما بس بتدينا ال three main branches اللي هم الceliac والsuperior mesenteric والinferior mesenteric. It also gives us other branches. تمام؟ يعني it doesn't just give us celiac, superior mesenteric, inferior mesenteric. It also gives us other branches that are very important. في suprarenal والrenal, الgonadal, which are basically female testicular في female ovarian. يعني again let me repeat إن الsuprarenal والrenal تمام. في تاني الgonadal, which is very important. في inferior phrenic, which are basically under the diaphragm. They supply the diaphragm. في lumbar, في common iliac, في median sacral. Okay, I'll show you guys again in the picture. So عندنا أول حاجة inferior phrenic, which بيطلعوا من الأورطة they supply a diaphragm. تمام. عندنا بعد ذاك suprarenal renal. Suprarenal supplies the adrenal gland والrenal supplies the kidneys. بعد ذاك عندنا gonadal. الgonadal ديل عندنا two منهم right and left again. وفي basically واحدة in males اسمها testicular while in female اسمها ovarian. If you're being general you just say gonadal. So testicular or ovarian. Inferior phrenic زي ما قلنا بيطلعوا right below the diaphragm. So they're the first ones that actually come out. بيطلعوا even above the celiac بيدوا diaphragm. في تاني lumbar which are 4 arteries بيطلعوا بس من الجنب كده at the level of each of the في L1 و L2 و L3 و L4. And they're basically just supplying the abdomen. في تاني common iliac و median sacral which are basically at the bifurcation. يعني common iliac دي بتحصل في هنا. It's the terminal branch. الأورطة في النهاية تدي common iliac right to left. وفي الميديان sacral ده ينازل من المحل حق البايفركيشن ذاتها. make sense؟ يعني عندنا في الأول بيطلعوا لنا الانفيريور phrenic. بعد الانفيريور phrenic بيدينا السوبرينال والرينال والسوبرينال. بعد كده عندنا الجونادال وفي اللمبار اللي هم أصلا بيمرقوا من each level. And then the aorta splits into two. The common iliac, right and left common iliac, which are the terminal branches. تمام? And then there's this one last branch that comes out at the end, which is called the median sacral. It's one branch from both. And it's one branch that comes out from the area of the bifurcation of the aorta. Well, is it clear يا جماعة؟ Okay, tamam. So this is important to know. Another thing you guys should know is that the bifurcation of the aorta itself happens at the level of L4. يعني الأورطة ذاتها when it splits into common right and left common iliac, it's the level of L4.
I have a question.
Yes?
Which one comes first, the renal or the gonadal? Like which one is superior?
Oh, the renal or the gonadal? I'll have to check because I'm not sure exactly in the order specifically. I think it's the renal above the gonadal though. Yeah, it's renal above gonadal. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, anytime. The renal is usually the big ones, so they look really, yani, in any picture diagram, the renal are the biggest ones. So they're above the gonadal. Anytime. Okay, so next we'll talk about the liver and the gallbladder. But we'll talk about the liver in details more than the gallbladder. Gallbladder, we'll just mention it. So, okay, so first of all, about the liver, we need to talk about the ligaments of the liver. A liver, it has 4 ligaments. Lakin we'll only focus on the main one, which is the falciform ligament. Falciform ligament is basically a layer of folded, 2 layers of folded peritoneum, and it's this part. So it's this. So it folds into, it's a layer of folded peritoneum. It splits the liver into right and left lobe. So the structure that splits the liver into right and left lobe is the falciform ligament. Cool. After that, at the top, it divides into 2. So it splits into 2. Part that goes to the right and part that goes to the left. Okay. It contains the ligamentum teres, which is the umbilical vein. So basically, in embryos, the umbilical vein that goes through the liver, and in the adults, it's no longer needed, so it becomes a ligament.
بدي أمي خليها تخلي إيش تعمليها القاطس عندنا بدي شنو؟ أنا عندي بطاطس طبيعية بس البطاطس شوفت lecture قاعدة
Sorry. Okay, yeah. So you're saying in the falciform ligament. Well, falciform ligament D, it's basically, it starts it comes from the peritoneum, where it splits into 2 at the top, and basically it contains a ligamentum teres. Ligamentum teres is basically the umbilical vein in adults. So in children, or in infants, in neonates before birth, it's an umbilical vein. Like once the person is born, you no longer need that vein, so it becomes a ligament, which is known as ligamentum teres. Another name for it is the round ligament of the liver. So if you see the word ligamentum teres or umbilical vein or round ligament of the liver, they're all the same thing. Okay. So it splits into right and left. Okay. This is the falciform ligament. So far, is it clear, Jamar? Okay. But after that, after it splits into 2, it'll form something else, which is known as the coronary ligament. Come on. So, oh no, sorry. The falciform ligament is the one that can splits into 2. يعني falciform ligament دي جواها الليجمنتم teres, and after الليجمنتم teres تلقاها في البottom part. لكن في الtop part ما بكون في ligamentum teres، بس بيكون في falciform ligament itself splitting into 2. Okay, and then after that falciform ligament ذاتها it forms حاجة اسمها coronary ligaments. Okay, and the coronary ligament دي it's formed by the and I have it right, it's formed by both falciform ligaments. So coronary ligaments are formed by the falciform ligaments. After that بيكون عندنا حاجة اسمها triangular ligament, and then عندنا حاجة ثانية اسمها ligamentum venosum. The coronary ligament with triangular ligament, I don't want you guys to think too much about them. They're pretty much never mentioned usually. في ligamentum venosum is the one that's actually important because it's a برضو embryological remnant of something we know as the ductus venosus in embryos. So basically في embryo we try to bypass the circulation, right? So we bypass, it's an opening between الembryological circulation and the vena cava, inferior vena cava. So it's basically بيكون اسمه ductus venosus, بيكون open في الembryo, but when the person is born, it's no longer needed, so it becomes closed and it becomes the ligament. It's basically very similar to ligamentum arteriosum in the heart, if you know it. So it's like the same idea, but in the liver. Make sense? But again, I'll repeat it. Basically, what happens is in the falciform ligament is going to split into two, forming the coronary ligaments. And then في triangular ligament هدينا left فيها from the coronary, لكنها right from the falciform طوالي. And it's not something we need to stress about. Then after that, we have a ligamentum venosum, which is basically a remnant of something known as the ductus venosus in the embryo. So ductus venosus in the embryo becomes ligamentum venosum in the adult in the liver. تمام? And it's usually just a duct that connects two veins to bypass the circulation in the embryo. Okay? يعني احنا عندنا the important one is the falciform ligament والligamentum venosum. Okay. But next thing, we have something known as the bare area of the liver. The bare area of the liver دي, it's an area that has no peritoneum. تمام؟ يعني peritoneum ما بغطيها. And it's an area that's bound by three structures. It's bound by the inferior vena cava, right triangular ligament, coronary ligaments. تمام؟ That's the only reason why you need to know what the ligaments are. عشان بس تكونوا you're able to name the boundaries of the bare area. دي البare area حوالينا هنا triangular ligament coronary ligament inferior vena cava, and it forms the bare area. تمام؟ And it's an area of no peritoneum. I would just, that's all you need to know. It's called the bare area of the liver. It has no peritoneum. It's the area that's next to the inferior vena cava. It's bound by right triangular ligament coronary ligament. تمام؟ طيب. Next, we're going to be talking about the lobes of the liver. And the lobes of the liver, in the two very important lobes. Like this is pretty much the most important part when it comes to liver. And make sure you always know this. عندنا a caudate lobe quadrate lobe. They're lobes on the inferior surface of the liver. يعني ما a right or left lobe. في a right or left lobe, they're on the superior surface of the liver. لكن في ديل two which are on the inferior surface of the liver. يلا inferior surface of the liver فيها two lobes there, caudate and quadrate. Let me show you them in the picture. The quadrate and then caudate. Okay. Now, in a lot of exams, they would ask you about them. In DR, sometimes they would label one of them. In the oral exam, they could ask you about them برضو. So it's a very common area of question. And best way to remember it for me specifically is that the C in caudate stands for inferior vena cava. So it's the one that's next to the inferior vena cava. So that's how I used to remember it, that caudate is next to the vena cava. So this would make this one the caudate and the other one the quadrate. Make sense? And just so that you don't have to memorize which is which all the time, just remember the caudate stands for cava. So the caudate lobe is next to the inferior vena cava or vena cava, while the quadrate lobe is the one that's next to the gallbladder. Done? Okay, great. So next thing we'll talk about the liver is the porta hepatis. The porta hepatis is basically the area where the structures that are going into the liver go into it. عندنا البile duct والبورتال فين والهيباتيك ارتري بروبر. تمام. فالثلاثه دول بيخشوا على الليفر. Important thing to know is إنه البورتال vein والhepatic artery are both supplying the liver with blood supply, but the most of the blood supply that the liver gets is from the portal vein, while at least blood supply that the liver gets is from the hepatic artery proper. Another thing to know is that the portal vein is going inside the liver; it's not going out of it. The venous drainage outside the liver is by the inferior vena cava. تمام؟ يعني ال blood supply for the liver is from the portal vein معاه الهيباتيك artery وال venous drainage from the liver is not from portal hepatics at all, it's from the inferior vena cava. في تاني البايل duct اللي هو بيكون going out of the liver into the gallbladder. تمام؟ طيب. So as I said, venous drainage of the liver is into the inferior vena cava. And nerve supply, not important, but we could say hepatic plexus with parasympathetic by the vagus nerve. Okay? Right. Any questions for the liver?
Innervation.
Okay, let's go back. So the innervation is by something we call as the hepatic plexus. Basically, sympathetic بيجي من celiac plexus, while parasympathetic بيجي من vagus. And I earlier قلت لكم إنه يعني it's more important to know about the parasympathetic active. يعني دايما all of the parasympathetic of the foregut is by the vagus nerve. Or most of the GIT أصلا is the vagus nerve. So تتذكرين the parasympathetic by vagus. الsympathetic شيلي اسم ال artery ونame it. يعني superior mesenteric plexus, celiac plexus, and so on.
Okay, got it.
Okay, great. طيب next in the gallbladder. So the gallbladder, what I want to talk about, برضو there's not much to say except for يعني a lot of times you would be confused about the arrangement of the gallbladder. The gallbladder عندنا البادي والneck حقها, and then عندنا cystic duct. This is the part where you need to know. إنه في cystic duct. A cystic duct ده is the duct that drains from the gallbladder to the bile duct. تمام؟ البيجي من الليفر اسمه hepatic duct. تمام؟ يعني عندنا hepatic duct from the liver و cystic duct from the gallbladder, sorry. سوا بيحملوا لنا البile duct. يعني البile duct you see that's coming into the pancreas ده is formed of a cystic duct which is coming from the gallbladder plus the hepatic duct or common hepatic duct which is coming from the liver. يعني both of them together are what form the bile duct. Cool? يعني البile duct اللي بيكون ماشي لنا عشان يخش لنا في the bile duct that goes to the small intestines or duodenum is a mixture of the cystic duct plus the common hepatic duct which comes from the liver. Got it? Last thing I want to mention is a surface marking of the gallbladder is found in the right ninth intercostal space in the mid-clavicular line. This is also an area of questions برضو مرات في امتحان DR mostly. They ask you for the surface marking of the gallbladder. It's in the right ninth intercostal space, mid-clavicular line. تمام؟ Okay, we'll stop here, take a short break.